Hi, my dear Astro family. So today we are going to be looking at the upcoming full moon taking place on the 12th or the 13th of April, depending on your time zone. It's pretty much late evening in the US on the 12th and early morning in Europe. Now, this is a quite a big full moon, actually. Therefore, I decided that I will be switching off my camera and I will be sharing the screen so you can see the real time clock because there is a lot of aspects involved here, and I think it's going to be just easier to follow it that way. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is, oh, by the way, this is going to be happening on 23 degree of Libra. And of course, it's a full moon. So we are talking about a sun and moon opposition. So while the sun is on 23 degree of Aries in conjunction to Chiron, by the way, the moon is going to be on 23 degree of Libra in conjunction to a fixed star called Spica. So that's what I'm going to be breaking down for you. I'm going to be teaching you about three asteroids as well that are involved in this full moon. So I hope that's going to be helping you quite a lot. There's a lot of fatedness going on, by the way, with this full moon, and I'm going to explain to you why. But I'm so excited to announce that I got invited by Susie Wu to hold a retreat for her audience in New York. So I will be in New York again from the 6th of June onwards. And basically, I'm going to be teaching you guys about the remedies of the planets. So this is an exciting topic. I know that plenty people are really curious about what the remedies are and so forth. So if you would like to check out who Susie Wu is, she's basically a metaphysician. She does astrology and she is all about tarot cards as well. The retreat is going to be taking place from June 6th to the 9th. It's going to be, I think, upstate New York, but please check the information on my website. So, yeah, I hope to see you there, basically. So, the remedy of the planets, let me just give you an example. For example, let's say you've got very Uranian signature, and often the problem with Uranus is that it has got commitment issues, or sometimes it's very erratic, or especially when we are looking at certain type of synastries, like Uranus in synastry connected to personal planets, stability or commitment could become an issue, for example, within that relationship. Or especially because Uranus is more to do with the modern relationships. And then if you are connected with someone who is more on the traditional side, there could be frictions there. Or Uranus is the unconventional relationship, or this is the need for space in relationship. Now, seeing your chart where it originates from and recognizing that might be giving you the remedy already. So this is exactly what we are going to be discovering in the upcoming course. So I really hope to see you there. But more about the retreat on my website. So see you soon there, June 6th. Remember, mark that down in your calendar. Now, let me just share the screen. And let me just switch off the camera so that you guys just can fully focus on the screen. And it doesn't matter, what house system it is in. I'm just going to be giving you a general description of what you see here. So the next full moon in Libra is coming up on the 13th or the 12th of April, as I mentioned earlier. It shows a time for focusing on balance, harmony, and relationships. I would say with the sun in Aries, it's all about me, our independence, our drive, and what we want as an individual. But the Libra moon pulls us towards we, so the partnership, the harmony, and considering other people's needs. So this full moon is about finding that sweet spot where we honor our own desires while also nurturing our connections with others. It's it's a balancing act between being assertive and compromising, between independence and interdependence. So this full moon isn't just about our relationships with others, but also the relationship we have with ourselves as well. It really feels like it's great time to reflect on whether you are being true to yourself and your needs, or if you are constantly putting other people's needs first. So let me just adjust this time clock a little bit. So you can actually see that the moon and the sun are in opposition. Here you go. So you can see that the moon is right there and the sun is right there. So now this full moon is actually in connection to a fixed star called Spica, which is approximately about 24, 25 degree of Libra. And Spica is associated with good fortune, especially in matters of love, creativity, or art. But it also adds a touch of grace and harmony to this already relationship-focused full moon. So this could actually talk to you about working on a creative project or bringing certain type of creativity in your existing relationship. And maybe with the sun in Aries, this could actually emphasize an element of adventure. Now, because this full moon is definitely about creating harmony, both within ourselves and with others as well. So I think it's time to think about what we truly want to share with the world and how we can bring more beauty and balance into our lives and relationships. Now, what I've also noticed with this full moon, that the ruler, Venus, has got an exact quincunx to the moon as well. And the quincunx aspect suggests there might be some tension or adjustments needed between our desire for harmony in relationships and our deeper values and commitments. It could actually bring up questions about where we might be sacrificing too much of ourselves to keep the peace. And the quincunx is often about frustration as well. So we might get frustrated about having to sacrifice or having to give up on something or having to let go of something because others want me to. So this full moon can be a little bit like I'm kind of fed up with all the things that is happening in my relationship with others and so on. Now, what also you notice in this chart, so here is the dispositor, Venus, that it has got pretty much of a tight conjunction to Saturn as well. And Saturn-Venus conjunction can highlight any insecurities or limitations we feel around our self-worth, especially in relationships. So, do I feel valued by my partner? Do they actually kind of like say thank you that we are ready to sacrifice or we are ready to kind of like give up on something that they want from us? I mean, imagine scenarios that, for example, your partner would like you to relocate to somewhere because they have got a job offer there. And it's kind of like natural for them that you are going to say yes. However, maybe your secret desire is that you don't want to go anywhere. So I think also this full moon is going to talk to you about having to reflect on whether you are valuing yourself enough or if you are seeking validations from others. The other thing that you see here is that the Mars has got a square to the sun and therefore has got a square to the moon as well. Now, Mars squared definitely adds another layer to this full moon. It can bring up some intense emotions and the need to assert ourselves, which might clash with the Libra moon's desire for peace and compromise. So on one hand, this Mars really feels like that it's trying to get us out of our comfort zone and it wants us to stand up for our feelings. But I also believe that it's important to be mindful of how we express our anger and frustration. to find healthy ways to release that energy without any type of disruptions. Now, because the moon is in quincunx to Venus, and I mentioned that with quincunxes, often there is frustration and unhealthy situation often happens with quincunxes. So something goes down that is, in your view, it's unhealthy. The Mars gets triggered here, and this is an emotional trigger. And maybe you feel injustice somehow. So something that might go down in certain type of relationships, and I don't feel good about it. I find it not just at all. So Mars in Cancer can kind of like talk to us about an emotional outburst. Now, with the Sun in Aries, there is that fiery energy and desire for immediate actions, which again can clash with the moon's need for balance and harmony. And that Mars in Cancer square can definitely bring up emotional reactions and sensitivity. So I think also this full moon is teaching us to be aware of any defensiveness or moodiness that might be popping up with this. And the sun in Aries, we might want things immediately. There is an element of an impatience going on. And the moon is trying to find balance within that also. So how patient we are and how much we would like to move forward, that could be also a topic here. Now, as you see, Mars, which is of course the dispositor of the sun, has got a sextile to Uranus. And Mars sextile to Uranus can definitely add some excitement or unexpected energy to the mix. It might bring sudden insights or a desire to break free from old patterns, especially in how we assert ourselves. Maybe we don't want to feel certain ways anymore because, of course, Mars is in the sign of Cancer. And sometimes we just want to detach from our feelings. We don't want to be angry anymore, or at least we want to know why we are angry. And Uranus can help with that. But I want to go back to that Saturn-Venus conjunction because it is also sitting on the North Node as well. And with Saturn and Venus conjunct the North Node, there can be a tendency to focus on limitations and fears around love and self-worth. And because the North Node is there, it feels like that this is compulsory literature to learn about our fears and limitations. But I often say that it's so important to remember that these are just thoughts and feelings. They don't define our worthiness. So this full moon is definitely giving us an opportunity to challenge those beliefs and maybe to step into a more empowered sense of self. Because the North Node guarantees an element of growth. And it looks like this is a spiritual growth. Now, the other thing that you notice is that Mars is building up the opposition to Pluto. And that has been going on for what, 6, 7 months now? That has been one of the major themes the last 7 months. So that can bring up intense power struggles and the need for control, which might feel especially challenging with the Libra moon's focus on balance and compromise. It's important to be mindful of how we are using our power and whether we are trying to control others or situations. So what it pretty much means is that maybe we are tired of being controlled or we are trying to control our emotions. And it's kind of like the last straw syndrome. It could feel like I'm going to kind of burst into cry or burst with anger. And both of them are just emotional reactions. And with the Libra full moon, that would be due to injustice, unfairness, or certain type of mistreatment. Now, Libra full moon can also talk to us about maintenance, compromise, negotiating. And with Venus and Saturn conjunction in the sign of Pisces, which Pisces is kind of like about graciousness. So I think this Libra full moon is highlighting the importance of maintaining or being able to negotiate or being able to compromise in our relationships. And Venus-Saturn conjunction in the sign of Pisces, it gives us the opportunity to bring a sense of grace and compassion to those interactions. You know, with Pisces is often about delicate, so like delicate balance between our needs and the needs of others. With Pisces, it's kind of like a touch of understanding as well as forgiveness. And because Libra is all about diplomacy, equality, and fairness, it's about seeing things from multiple perspectives and striving for what's just and balanced for everyone involved. And, with Saturn Venus conjunction near the North Node, I think there is a real emphasis on forgiveness. I think both of ourselves as well as others. It's about releasing any resentment or bitterness that might be holding us back from experiencing deeper love and connections. I mean, Pisces is all about, forgiveness, but it doesn't say that we have to forgive someone just to keep the balance and the harmony within the relationship, because then you ignore the sun in the sign of Aries, which says that you're going to have to be able to stand up for yourself as well. And I love talking about this deeper love type of element because, firstly, Saturn, Venus in the sign of Pisces could really talk to us about self-love. And self-love is the foundation for deeper connections with others. Venus-Saturn conjunction invites us to examine our relationship with ourselves and identify any limiting beliefs or patterns that might be hindering our ability to give and to receive love. It's about recognizing our inherent worthiness and cultivating a sense of self-acceptance and compassion. I love what RuPaul says. How the hell do you expect others to love you if you do not love yourself? And I think this chart is actually talking to us about that. With Saturn, that represents achievements, and Venus relates to money, this conjunction might indeed highlight our financial connections and our relationships with money as well. So it could even be a time to examine our values around money, like how we earn, how we spend the money. And maybe often with Saturn, we have to recognize patterns. So how we are aligned with like the deeper sense of self-worth, or how much our self-worth is tied to how much money we make. And, I cannot forget about the fact that the sun in the sign of Aries is all about courage, being initiative. So I think this full moon also is a calling us to be brave enough to step outside our comfort zones, especially when it comes to collaborations and negotiations. It's about finding the balance between assertiveness and compromise. It's kind of like being able to strike a deal that feels fair for me as well as for others. So one of the advice that I would give with this Libra full moon and Venus-Saturn conjunction, and of course Mars is in square to the full moon, that, there is a lot of relationship energy in the air. And I think one thing that we need to be focusing on is open communication, being able to talk about our feelings, as well as being able to see things from my partner's perspective, or being able to compromise as well. But with Saturn Venus in Pisces, it's also about setting healthy boundaries and making sure that our needs are being met as well. Maybe, it's all about listening to other people's perspective, but expressing your own needs and feelings. But in Pisces, it's a little bit like in a calm and respectful way. The respect comes from Saturn, the calmness comes from Pisces. And of course, this Pisces energy is extremely important because the dispositor of the full moon is in the sign of Pisces. Also, let's have a look at a couple of asteroids here. I mean, we do have got an asteroid involved called Nemesis. Its astrological number is 2348, if you would like to look it up. It's a very tight conjunction to this full moon. It's almost to the minute, actually. And asteroid Nemesis is associated with a sense of karmic justice, a feeling that what goes around comes around. So with this conjunction to the full moon, there might be a sense of fatedness around relationship, a feeling that certain connections are meant to be, or that old relationship patterns are coming up for review, especially, by the way, because Nemesis is retrograde right now. So the karmic justice and what comes and goes around, what it indicates, especially with the ruler being in Pisces, that things cannot be swept under the carpet. So there is no point in trying to postpone, procrastinate things, because it doesn't matter when we are going to talk about some uncomfortable things, eventually we're going to have to talk about it. And Libra's association with courts and law suggests that this full moon could bring up legal matters or a focus on justice and fairness as well. And with Nemesis also in the mix, there might be a feeling that past injustices are being brought to light, or there is a need, to kind of decide what's right or what's wrong. So you might feel like that someone who keeps attacking you of doing certain things, which you think that, there is nothing wrong with it, but in the eye of others, it's wrong. And sometimes the problem with Libra is that it's a people pleaser. So you definitely having to kind of like balance out here how much I want to please others and how much I want to be me. And again, with Venus conjunct Saturn and the North Node in Pisces, there is definitely that sense of divine law at play. It suggests that this full moon might bring up questions about spiritual justice or the feeling that there is a higher purpose or destiny at work in our relationships. Often we don't want to be giving up on this relationship, for example, because we feel like we haven't kind of like finished this karmic loop yet. And this full moon is definitely highlighting the importance of universal laws as well, like the law of attraction, the law of karma. It's time to reflect on what we are putting out in the world and how it might be coming back to us in our relationships. And what we attract is what we deserve. Often we need to remember that also. Now, look at that the sun actually has got a conjunction to Chiron. And the sun conjunct Chiron can bring up old wounds and insecurities, especially around our identity and self-expression. And that could make us like sensitive. So there is definitely the need here for deep healing and self-acceptance. Now, the other asteroid that is involved here is Minerva, which actually has got a conjunction to Mars. Now, Minerva is associated with wisdom and strategic thinking. With Mars conjunct Minerva, there might be a focus on taking wise and decisive actions, especially connected to our relationships. It's like forming a strategic relationship with someone. But also, it is about combining passion with intellect to navigate any challenges that arise. So in the political world, we might be seeing some very strategic movements as well between two nations, for example. But Mars in Cancer can be the representation of our origin or our family upbringing as well. So, and let's be frank, our upbringing can have a big impact on how we connect with others. It might influence our emotional reactions, our need for security, and even the way we express our anger, or assertiveness. And, with Mars in Cancer, family upbringing might have been very nurturing, very protective, perhaps maybe a bit overbearing or emotionally charged. There could be strong ties to family traditions and a deep need for security and belongings. And this can make someone very protective of loved ones, but also possibly prone to moodiness and defensiveness. Now, in worst case scenarios, Mars in Cancer could represent family feuds or even domestic violence. So it's important to be aware of these potential shadow sides to see that these are all projected onto our relationship. And, let's just talk about that Sun conjunct Chiron, which is a core wound around our identity, a deep-seated insecurity or feeling of not being good enough in some fundamental ways. And maybe this manifests as a fear of expressing your true self or the tendency to hide parts of who you are. And the moon in Libra. Well, especially in the context of relationship challenges and the need for harmony, can easily slip into that people-pleasing behavior. And this stems from the desire for acceptance and to avoid conflicts. So often this leads to neglecting your needs and boundaries. Why? Because we want to keep others happy. So this full moon is surely highlighting, this wounded ego seeking for validation and acceptance. And we might think that we can achieve all these through people pleasing. But what's the cost of that? The cost of your authentic self. And I think this full moon is telling us that it's time to be aware of these patterns. It's time to begin the work of healing, working through that core wound, because this is affecting your relationship. Of course, the Sun conjunction to Chiron has got an opposition to the moon. So it emotionally affects us. The other, with Chiron, often we need to, because this is a wounded healer, we need to know that our wounds shape us. It makes us stronger, especially when it's connected to Aries. So therefore, this full moon really feels like that we're going to have to find an inner balance. We're going to have to be able to accept these wounds. We're going to have to figure out how they can actually be a source of strength. Because knowing our wounds actually gives us wisdom. So one of the questions that might be also popping up with this full moon, whether you are aware of your own wounds. Now, one other interesting thing that we might want to be noticing here is that Venus is actually about to turn direct. But in this chart, actually, it is stationary. And of course, when a planet is about to turn direct, that's quite a big deal, especially when we are talking about, stationary planets. It looks like that after a period of reflection, maybe some confusion in the sign of Pisces, Maybe we were not aware of what we were meant to be working on, but now the Venus-Saturn conjunction might be giving us clarity. So we might get clarity on what we truly want and need in our connections with others. This is telling us that it's time to move forward with confidence in our relationships. But Venus is stationary. Often there is a feeling that things are being on hold. And with Venus stationary, it's totally normal. It's like universe is giving us a moment to pause and really think about what we value and who we value. So again, this is just telling us to reflect on our relationships and and then after making a decision and moving forward, whether together with someone or alone. Obviously, the alone would be coming from Sun in Aries, which might be scared to be alone because it has got a conjunction to Chiron, or we're going to move together, Moon in Libra, but with a stronger foundation. Think of that Sun in Aries as a warrior. But Libra, on the other hand, is about balance, the peacemaker. So this full moon is highlighting the tension between our individual needs and our desire for connections. We can also think about with the Venus stationary, especially connected to Saturn, that there might be some delays or certain type of pauses in peace talks. Imagine that we are in a boardroom and then we are talking, and then every 50 minutes we need kind of like a cup of tea. Because maybe with that Mars in Cancer squaring the full moon, it feels like that I'm going to blow up. So maybe we are unable to spend 1 hour in the same room with others, and we need small breaks to kind of cool down. So with that Venus, Saturn, stationary energy, it could really kind of feel like that we are stuck, or we need to be extra patient, or we need to be a little bit more careful, more considerate. Otherwise, it feels like we are not moving forward. And by the way, that Venus has got a pretty tight sextile to Uranus as well. And, that often talks to us about an unexpected shift in our relationships or in our values. What was important yesterday might not be important anymore. It might be a time where we might be drawn to new experiences or even making unconventional connections. Or we are really excited about a new connection, or we just desire for freedom, or we just want to be expressing ourselves freely. But because Venus is stationary and it doesn't move, with the Uranus, it could be a push and pull between wanting to stay, let's say, in our comfort zone, or feeling the urge to break free and try new things. So again, from a relationship perspective, we've got the desire to break up, but we still stay in the relationship anyway, because maybe there is no bravery there. So Uranus is definitely there to shake things up and to encourage us to step outside of our usual routines and to get outside of our comfort zone. So guys, this is my interpretation on the upcoming um, lunation. One other thing that I wanted to actually check for you, but I forgot. So let me just quickly check that as well, because I wanted to see if Venus was on any important asteroids. Now, the asteroids that we covered today One of them was Minerva, as you can see. Its astrological number is 93. It's in 25 degree of Cancer. The other asteroid that we covered is Chiron, which I'm sure most of you are aware of. And then we had one more, which was Nemesis. Astrological number is 128, and it's on 23 degree 48 minutes. Okay, so what I was checking is if there is any um, asteroid that might be involved with Venus, and we do see Cassandra. I think I've spoken about Cassandra before, but Cassandra is associated with prophecy and speaking the truth, even when no one believes you. With Venus conjunct Cassandra, it could suggest a need to speak our truth in relationships, even if it's uncomfortable. But it might also highlight a fear of rejection or not being heard. Now, Cassandra was cursed so that nobody would believe her prophecies. So this could definitely indicate some challenges in communication or feeling unheard in relationships during this full moon. And I feel like with Venus being stationary, maybe the hesitation is, what's the point in me talking up? Obviously, we've got this Sun and Chiron conjunction in the sign of Aries, which usually would have the bravery to speak up, but I got burned before. And then it feels like with this Venus and Cassandra conjunction, what's the point in me telling my truth when no one is going to listen to me? Okay, so guys, maybe it's time to break this down for the 12 signs. So let's do that. Okay, so let's get started with Aries rising sign. So, dear Aries, you've got the full moon taking place in your seventh house, with Sun and Chiron conjunction in your first house. Mars is squaring this from the fourth house, and the dispositor of this full moon is Venus-Saturn conjunction in your 12th. So this full moon in your seventh house is all about relationships. It's a time of culmination and clarity, especially with the Sun and Chiron conjunction in the first house. Like this could bring up some old wounds or insecurities. But surely this is also giving you the chance for healing and growth within your partnership. So, to give you an example, this could be an indication that you feel like you are not being paid attention to, or you have to be somehow pleasing the partner, and so forth. Um, also, with Mars squaring from the fourth house in Cancer, there might be some tension between your home life and your relationships. It's important to address any underlying issues from the past that could be affecting your current partnership. So, having to heal the relationship in order for us to do what we might need to be healing where we come from, because Mars is squaring from the fourth house in Cancer, and the fourth house is our roots. So, imagine if you grew up in an environment which, was violent somehow, or in a way toxic, or overbearing, suffocating. That's going to get projected onto your relationship. So we're going to have to be able to recognize this. Now, the dispositor of this full moon is actually Venus, which is in your 12th house, making a very tight conjunction to Saturn as well as the North Node. Now, this triple conjunction in the 12th house is actually really interesting. It suggests that this full moon could bring up some karmic relationships or past life connections. There might be a sense of destiny or fate involved in your partnerships right now. So imagine that you are single and then you meet someone. It could feel like really destined, really fated type of connections. But also, with Venus being stationary in the 12th house, could definitely bring up feelings of hesitation or fear around moving forward in your relationship. So maybe you have got the desire to actually get strong and, let's say, have a breakup. But the stationary Venus might be uncertain about whether this is the right course of action. And also, this might be telling you that it's time to reflect on any of your past experiences that holding you back. So recognizing some of the relationship patterns that we might have had experienced, in the in your life, basically. Now, the 12th house can represent family lineage and inherited patterns. So this full moon might be highlighting those patterns in your relationships, therefore giving you an opportunity to break free and create healthier connections. And the healthiness is really coming from Pisces, of course. Now, the 12th house is also the representation of reflection and release. So it looks like it's a chance to look at your relationships and see what is working and what's not. The planet of working is Saturn. And when we realize that something is not working, then actually we can start the healing procedure. And you can use this energy to let go of old patterns and create space, maybe for a better relationship. Often, what happens with Pisces energy is that we are yearning for something. Now, I believe that having Spica also connected to this full moon, which can be associated with communication and expression, I also believe that it is actually this full moon is trying to teach you to find your voice and to speak your truth with your partner. So I think this full moon is highlighting the need to have honest, open conversations and sometimes even clear the air. Now, with Saturn and Venus having to forgive or having to kind of give up on something might be, important. And Venus is actually having a conjunction to Cassandra. And in Greek mythology, she was cursed to utter prophecies that no one believed. With Venus, the planet of love and relationships, this conjunction might highlight situations where you feel unheard or misunderstood in your partnership. It is telling you, though, that it's time to trust your intuition, even if others don't seem to understand you. I also believe that remembering that relationships are not always about romantic connections, and often people forget about it. So, of course, this might be even talking to us about just a particular person in our lives who, who might have hurt our ego with Sun and Chiron conjunction, for example, in your first house. And also, this could bring up the topic of appearance and presentation, or what you deserve, what type of attention you deserve to get. And maybe you are going to decide to walk away from a long-term relationship. Maybe you have been too nice to this person. Maybe you have been like people pleasing. Maybe you didn't put your needs first. And it looks like that the Sun and Chiron conjunction is actually telling you that you need to. It might start kind of like frustrating or agitating you that you had to be the nice person all the time. So also with the seventh house full moon, which is about justice. So you just want equality. You want to be fairly treated. And that Sun and Chiron conjunction is fighting to reveal itself. It's fighting um, to be you, to be an unapologetic version of yourself. Okay, so let's move on to Taurus rising sign. So dear Taurus, oh, before actually we move on to Taurus rising sign with Aries, I also wanted to say that we have got Minerva connected to your Mars as well in the fourth house. And Minerva is the Roman goddess of wisdom and strategy. Now, combined with Mars, the planet of action and drive, suggests that you're gonna have to be like having a strategic way of approach, like taking initiative in your home life and family matters. And sometimes it is also an indication that we're gonna have to like put our head together to tackle any challenges with a focused mind with family members or people that we share roof with. Now, Taurus rising sign. So this full moon is happening in your sixth house with Sun and Chiron conjunction in your 12th house. So this is talking to us about having to balance your daily routines and responsibilities with your spiritual and inner, like your spiritual and inner world. So the Sun and Chiron conjunction in the 12th could bring up some subconscious patterns or old wounds related to your health and well-being. It really looks like that this full moon energy is telling us to focus on self-care, to find balance in your daily routine, maybe even to strike a balance in your diet. It could talk to you about incorporating some new healthy habits into your own schedule. And the key would be there, regularity. Now, the dispositor of this full moon is actually Venus and Saturn, sorry, Venus, which has got a conjunction to Saturn in your 11th house. And it could indicate some challenges or restrictions within your social circle or friendships. Maybe you feel a little bit isolated or like your social life is limited right now. And surely with this full moon in the sixth house and the ruler of it, Venus in the 11th house, can also indicate that it's time to find the balance between your personal values and your role in the community. So maybe it's a time when we have to be reflecting on whether your social connections align with your true self. And maybe also having to look at whether the connections that you have are healthy within those groups, or actually they are unhealthy. And the Libra element is always about a decision making, but there is often a lot of hesitation around it. So, and of course, Venus is stationary, so it's not ready to move on. And we've got a quincunx happening between Moon and Venus. So it could indicate some tension or awkwardness between your personal values and your emotional needs, especially within those social groups. So maybe it's time to reevaluate those connections and see if they truly serving you. Are they your friends for the right reason? Now, Mars and Minerva conjunction squaring the full moon from your third house. And that could indicate some type of tension between your communication style and your daily routines. You might feel a little bit irritable or impatient. Let's say you want to lose weight with that full moon in the sixth house, and it's not going as fast as you expected. So we might start showing some impatience there. And often Venus in Pisces might just want to give up. But also, this could indicate that you feel irritable or impatient when it comes to expressing your needs and your desire. So let's say that you have been feeling overwhelmed with work lately, sixth house. This full moon might bring that to a head, and you could find yourself snapping at colleagues or feeling extra stressed about deadlines. So I think the key here is to recognize those triggers and find healthier ways to manage them. The snapping comes from Mars in the third house. Now, the Sun and Chiron conjunction in the 12th house could definitely bring up fears around stepping into your own power and shining your light. And let's be frank, it's a common struggle. So this full moon is a great opportunity to work through those insecurities and embrace your unique um, self. Now, I think also this full moon is an invitation to check out your spiritual inclinations. Maybe simply you just want to be walking away from a work environment. And maybe it's a work environment that doesn't allow you to shine, or you kind of feel discriminated. Or maybe the workplace is treating you like a pushover, a doormat. So the Sun and Chiron would like you to contemplate, to retreat, to reflect a little bit. Whether, and often with that Saturn and Sun conjunction in the 11th house, you might feel obligation towards your work colleagues. And the question with this workplace is, with Sun and Chiron in the 12th house, how much does the work drain me? Because it could indicate that you somehow feel burnt out. So self-care is surely a topic for you. Okay, let's move on to Gemini rising sign. So dear Gemini, the full moon is taking place in your fifth house, which is all about creativity, self-expression, and romance. With Sun and Chiron in your 11th house of community and friendship, you might be feeling a pull between your personal desires and your social obligations. I mean, it's very easy to feel torn between supporting a friend and honoring your own needs. So this full moon is inviting us to find that balance. Maybe you can carve out some time for yourself to recharge so you can be there for your friend without completely sacrificing your own happiness. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say it can feel like that, I have to be ignoring my romantic life because my best friend has just gone through a major breakup. So let's say I don't want to talk about my relationship challenges or how happy I am in a relationship. Now, the dispositor of this full moon is Venus, which makes a conjunction to Saturn in the 10th house. And the 10th house is all about your public image and career. Now, with Venus stationary, you might be feeling a bit stuck or unsure about your directions in life. So maybe it's a good time to reflect on your long-term goals and make sure that it truly aligns with who you are. Obviously, that's the moon in the fifth house. Now, with the fifth house also representing self-employment and the Venus-Saturn conjunction in the 10th house highlighting your career, this full moon could bring up some clarity around your work-life balance. Maybe you are considering a career change or exploring ways to bring more creativity into your current job. Or this could even indicate that you simply are considering to do something self-employment wise. Now, Mars is squaring this full moon from the second house of finances. And it can create some tension between your creative pursuits and your financial stability. You might feel a bit torn between wanting to invest into your passion and needing to be practical with your money. And the fact that Mars has got a conjunction to Minerva, the asteroid of strategy, so it really looks like that we have to be a little bit more on the cautious side with money, or we are planning financially. But of course, it's not necessarily easy when we have got, Cancer on the second house cusp, because Cancer is kind of like an emotional buyer. So it's kind of like wanting to, it shops with the eyes, basically. Okay. I also believe that maybe with that Sun and Chiron conjunction, it's all about how influential you can be. And maybe you just want to be walking away from kind of like a friendship because maybe you feel like that the person is too selfish, too self-absorbed. And maybe actually the friend of yours wants the best for you, but you might not be able to see that. Or maybe you decide that you want the best for yourself. And also, this could be an indication that it's time to grow up because the fifth house can sometimes be a little bit childlike. Or simply, this is an indication that it's time to tap into your childlike energy if you are a little bit more on the serious side. So to kind of explore that inner child. And maybe with that Sun and Chiron conjunction, you have to be dealing with some toxic people around you, or maybe there are some toxic people around your children, and then you want to be kind of like working on that a little bit. Of course, this full moon has got a conjunction to Spica, which is quite a creative fixed star. So maybe this can even indicate that your child is kind of like trying to find some creative solutions as well, or you are going to be focusing a little bit more on on your children. You want to be spending more time with them, or you want to be protecting them from kind of like making a bad choice. Um, Now, the dispositor of this full moon, as mentioned earlier, is Venus. And it also can be some scenarios where you don't feel appreciated by your bosses. And or maybe it can feel like that the bosses are taking advantage of you. And Saturn sometimes tell us that we're gonna have to be able to say no to them. And also with Sun and Chiron conjunction in the 11th house actually could bring up fears around visibility and being seen. Maybe there is a worry about judgment or rejection when we step into the spotlight. So, but this full moon can help us to embrace our unique gifts and sharing them with the world. Let's move on to Cancer rising sign. So, for you, Cancer, this full moon is in the fourth house, with Chiron and Sun conjunction in the 10th house. So this is all about balancing your home life and your career. Now, with the Sun and Chiron in your 10th house of public image and professional life, you might be feeling a pull between your personal needs and your career aspirations. So simply, it's the work and life balance, where maybe the moon desires to spend more time at home, but there is a lot going on your plate. And it's all about finding that sweet spot between your career goals and your personal life. Maybe you have been trying to burn the candle at both ends, and now we're going to have to be able to create some boundaries. Now, the Venus-Saturn conjunction in your ninth house is all about your beliefs, values, and the sense of adventure. Now, with Venus stationary, you might be feeling a bit stuck or restricted in these areas. You might feel that the opportunities don't come around that easily. It might feel like that you're going to have to be working extra hard to get work opportunities or to get promoted. And maybe this Venus Saturn conjunction is trying to kind of like change your belief system around it. Maybe it's time for you to reevaluate your long-term goals and see if these goals still align with your current belief system. It can also indicate that you have been burned out with Sun and Chiron conjunction by the profession you chose or the work that you do. And then you just desire to be, let's say, on a holiday, to escape, to go on like vacations or to travel to another country. And that's Venus and Saturn in the ninth house. You might be actually gaining some clarity about certain type of opportunities. And it could definitely represent that you are craving some time off to recharge. And that's the Pisces element. Sometimes it's just the change of scenery that we need. Now, Mars has got a conjunction to Minerva in the first house and squaring this full moon. Now, this could indicate some tension between your personal needs and your home life. You might feel a bit irritable or impatient when it comes to expressing your emotions, or maybe simply you are feeling angry with work situations. But at the same time, you just want to keep the peace. You don't want to get into arguments, or you are hesitating whether to kind of put the boxing gloves on or to maintain the speed, maintain the peace somehow. And maybe simply this is just talking to us about that you're going to have to gather your courage with Mars in the first house and to move on. Maybe it even indicates that work has become toxic, for example, or you feel like that your identity has been hurt or your pride got hurt at work. So this might be an indication that you are ready for a change, but it can be very scary though. And maybe the scary part is that you have got family obligations, a family to feed, a mortgage to pay, and all those type of stuff. But it feels like it's time to explore new opportunities and maybe find a work environment that feels more supportive or aligned with your sense of values. And Mars in the first house is also about taking actions and being brave. So I think that is telling us to step into your own power and create a work life that truly fulfills you. And maybe you want to be talking about these work issues, but Venus has got a conjunction to Cassandra. And it could feel like that you are not being heard or understood. So you are kind of like hesitating to talk about this work and life balance, for example, with your boss, because no one listens to me anyway. Or they're going to be listening to us for a couple of seconds, but then they shrug it off. So I think also this might be bringing up the topic of respect. So, how much I feel respected at work, or maybe there are some toxicity going on with family members. It somehow gets triggered. So, so you decide to walk away from these family situations. Maybe you feel like that your family is not respecting your choices. And maybe you are ready to create your own legacy. Maybe it feels like there is so much kind of like politics going on at work or within your family that you are kind of like, enough is enough. Let's move on to Leo rising sign. So, Leo, this full moon is in your third house, and it's all about communication, learning, your immediate environment. Now, with the Sun and Chiron in your ninth house of beliefs, higher learning, maybe you feel this pull between your desire to express yourself and the desire to explore new ideas. Sometimes it's a bit scary, right? Because having something that has been, working for you for a while, but with that Sun and Chiron, we might feel inspired to move towards new directions. But with Chiron, it can be quite scary because what if I'm going to get burned? Now, the dispositor is Venus, which has got a conjunction to Saturn in your eighth house. And that's all about transformation, intimacy, shared resources. With Venus being stationary, you might be feeling a bit stuck or restricted in these areas, or it could be a time to reevaluate your relationship and how you share resources with others. This might be a a conversation that you are about to be having with a partner, and it might be uncomfortable. Obviously, the third house is conversations. The eighth house can represent relationships, especially because Saturn is the ruler of your relationship department. But this full moon could even bring up some interesting dynamics in your relationship, not only in a romantic way, but with siblings, neighbors, or extended family members. So this might be an invitation to have some open and honest conversation about how you communicate and how we listen to each other. Now, with Venus-Saturn conjunction, it could definitely feel like you are not being heard or understood. It could feel like, because Saturn Venus often the representation of self-worth, being valued. So maybe I want to be talking up about not feeling valued, not feeling heard. Maybe we are meant to be talking about our psychological issues, our psychological complexes, that you have been struggling with some self-worth or self-image issues, because eighth house can represent aging. So you are afraid of aging, you are afraid of dying, or you are afraid to move forward. It could indicate that you are feeling somehow paralyzed. With Saturn Venus conjunction, this could even talk to us about that I don't feel lovable, I'm not worthy. And maybe it's time to kind of like visiting a therapist. So speaking your own truth about it. And Mars is squaring this full moon in the 12th house. So that brings up some tension between your desire for adventure and your need for emotional security. Mars often makes us a bit restless or irritable, especially when it comes to expressing your beliefs with that square to Sun and Chiron. Feeling irritable when we have to be exploring new ideas. But this is in the 12th house. So this might be stirring up some old emotions or even family issues from the past as well. So it might be a good time for you, Leo, to address any lingering feelings or even unresolved conflicts with people. And also with that Sun and Chiron, it looks like it's time to be connected to your higher self. Maybe it's time to walk away from, kind of like a less, like more of a rigid mindset. That's the third house. And the ninth house is something to do with an open-mindedness. Maybe we're going to have to walk away from negative belief systems towards a more positive one. Maybe it's time to focus a little bit more on optimism. Maybe because Libra can represent justice. So maybe you are ready to have a conversation about justice. You might feel not treated fairly by someone, and you are ready to kind of talk about that. Maybe you feel controlled by someone because Venus is in the eighth house. Let's move on to Virgo rising sign. So, dear Virgo, this full moon is happening in your second house, the house of finances and values. So, on one hand, this is bringing up the topic about your relationships with money and material possessions. The Sun in Chiron, conjunction in your eighth house of shared resources and transformation, might suggest that there are some very deep-seated emotional issues tied to your financial situation. Maybe this is telling you that it's time to heal. Maybe this is telling you to explore those uh, um, deep-seated matters connected to your finances so that you can achieve financial abundance. Now, Mars is squaring this full moon from the 11th house, which is the house of community and friendship. So this could bring up some tension between your personal values and your social life. Maybe you feel a bit torn between wanting to fit in and staying true to yourself. So this full moon could bring up feelings of insecurity, um, especially in your social situations. So it might be also a good time to reflect on your self-worth and maybe challenge any negative beliefs that are holding you back. Do you feel valued with your friends? Maybe a friend of yours is going to tell you something hurtful, which hurts your ego. And then you kind of start talking down on yourself. Now, the dispositor of this full moon is actually Venus. And Venus has got a conjunction to Saturn in your seventh house. And that's the house of partnership and relationship. Now, with Venus being stationary, you might be feeling a bit stuck or restricted in that area. It could be a time to reevaluate your relationships and make sure that it's built on solid foundation, and the solid foundation is Saturn. It's built on mutual respect, Saturn, mutual understanding, Pisces. So let me give you an example. Maybe you have been feeling undervalued in your relationship, like you are giving more than you are receiving. And this full moon might bring that to a head, and you could find yourself reevaluating whether the relationship is truly serving your needs. And Venus has got a conjunction to Cassandra, which might indicate that you would like to say your truth, but you might feel that they are not listening to you. Let's say your partner or someone important in your life. Maybe with that Mars square to this full moon in the 11th house, maybe you simply don't feel supported by your friends about the relationship choices that you make. Well, Virgo, I also believe that with the Sun and Chiron conjunction in your eighth house, maybe there is toxicity going on in your relationships. Maybe the toxicity is connected to money. So therefore, it could be your bosses as well, because, or it could talk to you about codependency elements also. Um, and, the moon in Libra is often about people pleasing. So it could feel like that I have to swallow my anger. I have to kind of like not speak up about certain things because what if I'm not going to get the financial support anymore? Let's move on to Libra rising sign. So, dear Libra, I mean, this full moon is actually in your first house, which is all about your identity, your image. And with Venus conjunct Saturn in your sixth house, well, it looks like you are about to start working on your self-image to feel better in your own skin. But also with that Venus and Saturn, you might be feeling a bit restricted or limited in your daily routines or work life, which is actually affecting your physical health. Maybe it's time to reevaluate your habits and to make sure that you chose things that are connected to your overall well-being. Now, with Sun and Chiron in your seventh house, you might be extra sensitive to any, power imbalances in your relationships. And this could trigger some insecurities about your own identity or about your own appearance. And then I want to be hiding, I don't want to be showing up in the world. It could make you more vulnerable in your daily routines and work life, which is, of course, Venus and Saturn in the sixth house. Mars is squaring from the 10th, and that could bring up some tension between your career goals and your personal needs. You might feel torn between wanting to succeed professionally as well as needing to prioritize your own well-being. This could really feel like that maybe you are overwhelmed at work. There is a lot going on. And it can feel like that you don't have the time to do your diet, for example. You don't have the time to do your daily routines. And also, simply what do we do on a daily basis in my relationships? Maybe you have been focusing on impressing others all the time. Maybe it feels like that your colleagues are taking advantage of you. And then maybe Saturn connected to Venus tells you that sometimes you're gonna have to say no to them. Maybe you have been confused about what it means to have a healthy identity or a healthy body, and you're gonna have to be reframing that. And also, with Venus being stationary in the sixth house, can indicate that um, work has become stagnant. So maybe the business has slowed down, maybe it's boring, maybe I don't relate to people I work with. So you are ready to kind of like explore new um, work opportunities. Let's move on to Scorpio rising sign. Well, dear Scorpio, we've got the full moon happening in your 12th house, the house of endings, closure, and releasing what no longer serves you. With Sun in Chiron in your sixth house, you might be extra sensitive to any imbalances in your work life or in your daily routines. Maybe you are not in the mood to go to the gym, you feel tired, you feel burned out. And maybe Mars squaring the full moon from your ninth house, maybe you feel little bit conflicted about your beliefs or your worldview. So maybe it's time to look at a little bit your rigid thinking patterns and maybe being open to new perspectives in life. And also maybe that Mars is telling you that you don't just need to be focusing on your physical well-being, but it's time to focus on your emotional well-being as well. So we're gonna have to strike a balance there. So taking care both the physical and the mental plane. With the 12th house, often we have to be focusing on our inner world and make sure that you are taking care of your emotional and spiritual needs as well. I think with Mars in the ninth house, tells us that we have to be focusing a little bit more on our mental well-being, as well as cutting out anything that might be toxic. What's toxic in your life? Maybe it's time to explore some new philosophies or doing some spiritual practices, of course, that resonates with you. Maybe it's simply time to walk away from wanting to hide away, being in the dark. Maybe it's time to do some spiritual work. Maybe it's time to do some healing work with Moon in the 12th house. Maybe you will need assistance for that because Moon is in Libra. Maybe you will need your partner, a friend of yours, and so forth. Maybe we need someone who inspires you, and that could be Mars in the ninth house, a mentor, for example. And also, it could indicate that you feel like that you have got enemies. And maybe it is telling you that just you need to be thinking about enemies as people that we have to be keeping closer than our friends. Okay, let's move on to Sagittarius rising sign. So, dear Sagittarius, we've got the full moon happening in your 11th. Oh, before actually we move on to Sagittarius, I wanted to mention something else for Scorpio because the full moon is ruled by Venus. which of course makes a conjunction to Saturn in the fifth house. So with Venus-Saturn conjunction in your fifth house, which is all about creativity, self-expression, and romance, and with Venus being stationary, you might actually feel a bit stuck or restricted in your, let's say, in your romantic life. So this could also be a time to reevaluate what ignites your passion, what you want to do in the long term, in the long run. And maybe you're going to have to be kind of like blocking out any type of negative belief systems and then going with the creativity. Yes, maybe you feel a little bit lost somehow. Maybe you have been feeling a bit lost or unsure about the direction in life. And this full moon might try to bring you clarity around your long-term goals, or it tries to bring you some opportunities. So I feel like with that Venus and Saturn, it's time to examine your passions and then doing something that truly fulfills you. Okay, so let's move on to Sagittarius rising sign. Okay, dear Sagittarius, we've got the full moon happening in your 11th house. And Sun and Chiron conjunction is in your fifth house. So it looks like that you are about to be examining your long-term goals, your hopes towards future. And also the 11th house represents communities as well. So with the Sun and Chiron in your fifth house, you might be feeling extra sensitive to any creative blocks, or you feel insecure about who you are, or you think that you cannot express yourself, the true self. Maybe with the Sun and Chiron in your fifth house, you might feel a bit vulnerable or exposed when it comes to expressing your creativity or putting yourself out there on a stage. And that could create a tension because the moon in the 11th house has got a desire for connections to be part of a larger organizations, for example. And Sun definitely would like to be on a stage. It's just Chiron might be holding it back. Now, Mars is squaring this, all from the eighth house. So that might talk to us about certain type of tension between your desire for intimacy and connection and your need for independence and self-expression. So you might feel a bit conflicted about sharing your uh, vulnerabilities with others. You might want to be improving your sex life within your relationships, or you just want to be improving your connections with others. And the eighth house is also a psychological house. It represents your psychological complexes. So maybe we do have got some traumatic childhood experiences to work through here. Maybe this full moon, I mean, the ruler of this full moon is a Venus. And Venus is stationary and has a conjunction to Saturn in your fourth house. So with Venus and Saturn in your fourth house, there might be some family dynamics or past experiences that are influencing your current relationships and even your sense of security. So maybe this full moon wants you to explore those patterns and see if there is any healing that needs to happen. This full moon actually can give you the desire to buy a home, to relocate, but we might have got some financial considerations with Mars in the eighth house. Maybe you have got the money, the partner doesn't, and then we might not see eye to eye. Also, um, maybe your hobbies somehow needs your attention a little bit. Maybe you decide that, okay, with the moon in the 11th house, I have been popular. I am always surrounded by people and friends, and now I need a little bit of a me time. Maybe you are tired of pleasing your friends. And then you say that, you know what, I want to be actually pleasing my own needs. And that could bring up a bit of a friction because people might not be reacting to it, could look like that you are being selfish. You cannot go on the rescue of others all the time, and people might be kind of like blaming you for it or judging you because you say no to them. Okay, let's move on to Capricorn rising sign. Well, Capricorn, this full moon is happening in your 10th house, the house of career, public image, and your role in the world. Now, with Sun and Chiron in your 4th house, you might be feeling a strong pull between your professional ambitions and your personal or family life. So it brings up the topic of work and life balance. Well, with Sun and Chiron in your 4th house, you might feel a bit vulnerable and exposed when it comes to family matters, and therefore you decide that you're spending more time at work because you don't want any confrontations at home. So the full moon in your 11th house, and with Sun and Chiron in your 4th house, maybe what's happening is that somehow your professional ambitions are affecting your family and home environment, as well as whatever goes down at home might be actually affecting your performance at work. Now, Mars is squaring this full moon, and Mars is in your 7th house. So there could be some tension between your career goals and your personal relationships. You might feel a bit torn between wanting to succeed professionally and needing to prioritize your partnership. Imagine that the partner is angry with us that we take work home all the time. And, maybe this is actually telling us that it's a good time to have an open and honest conversation with your partner about work and life balance, and maybe just telling them that work is actually important to you or the family is actually important to you. The reason being is the communication is a huge part of this because the dispositor of this full moon is Venus, which has a conjunction to Saturn in your 3rd house. And that could show that there is an important conversation that needs to happen right now. This could indicate that it's time to clear the air and making sure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to these family members. Maybe it's a purchase of a home, maybe it's a sales of a home, maybe it's just clearing the air with the partner. And or maybe it's a say no to a boss. With full moon in your 10th house of career and Venus conjunct Saturn in your 3rd house of communication, it's definitely a time to set boundaries and say no when you need to, even to your boss, because you might feel used and they keep asking you to do overtime, to do extra days, and so forth. And the Libra has got the element of not wanting to upset others. So therefore, they're gonna say no to things. And Saturn would like to teach a lesson to you about this. Also, this could indicate that, maybe you are considering of stepping down from a promotion. You are stepping down from a work opportunity because you would like to focus a little bit more on having a family. Maybe what you are working on is that you would like to get more respect at work. But the stationary Venus might indicate that this is not going to be happening from one day to another. And respect doesn't come our way that easily anyway. So also this could indicate that you have to be reorganizing your home, or you dealing, with like rental issues, property issues, and you're gonna have to take a little bit of a time off, for example. Maybe you decide that you would like to um in a way to, let's say, do a little bit more household chores. We have to be agreeing with the partner over this because Mars is a little bit feisty in the seventh house. We might be getting pushed a little bit by our partner to do a little bit more at home. And you might feel tired, but you also feel that this might be the truth. Okay, let's move on to Aquarius rising sign. So, dear Aquarius, we've got the full moon happening in your ninth house, which is about expansion, adventure, your belief system, foreign countries. And with Sun and Chiron in your third house, you might be feeling extra sensitive to any ways people talk to you, or you might feel somehow challenged when it comes to your learning experiences or understanding certain type of situations. Now, with the full moon in your ninth house, you might be feeling a strong desire to travel or explore new cultures. Maybe it's time for you to broaden your horizon and step outside of your comfort zone. So, this could bring up the topic of relocation for you as well. Maybe it's a foreign travel, maybe it's a foreign country that you are considering. The question is there that bravery there? Because, of course, Mars is squaring this full moon from your sixth house, and surely that could bring up some tension between your daily routines and your desire for adventure. You might feel a bit restless or impatient when it comes to work. Maybe things are not moving forward as quickly as we would like to, or, people are lazy at work and it's frustrating. Or maybe there is a need here to recharge the batteries, to feel better emotionally or physically. And maybe this is the reason why we need to be traveling somewhere. Uh, maybe it's all about focusing on holistic health. So surely this full moon with Mars in the sixth house does ask us to focus on self-care and finding balance in your daily routine. That might be the key here. And maybe that Mars is also telling us that it's time to incorporate some new healthy habits into our schedule. Now, the ruler of this full moon is Venus, which has got a conjunction to Saturn in your second house. And Venus and Saturn conjunction in your second house, you might be focusing on your finances and values. So it might be a good time to reevaluate your spending habits, to make sure it might be a time for you to kind of like look at how much money you make, how much money have you saved, or what you are spending money on. So maybe it's time to reevaluate your source of money. What do I make money out of? So let's suppose that you have been feeling a bit restricted in your spending lately. This full moon might bring up like some opportunities to invest in a experience that aligns with your values, like traveling to a new country or taking a course so that you can expand your knowledge. It's kind of like trying to buy an experience. But at the same time, you might be having financial obligations or financial considerations, whether to travel to this foreign country or to take new course and so forth, because money might have been a slightly bit like tight. Maybe there is an important decision to make about your finances. Maybe it's time for you to create a budget and even exploring new ways to manage your money. Also, I would say that because Sun and Chiron is in your third house, which is all about your thinking process. That needs a bit of an attention there. So, what do you think of yourself? Who do you think you are? Are you kind of like talking down on yourself? Are you allowing others to talk to you in certain ways or to think for you or to think of you in certain ways? And sometimes I think one of my favorite saying is that what others think of me is none of my business. And that's true. But when people talk to us in certain ways, that is our business, right? So we don't necessarily need to allow that. And maybe Mars is actually inviting us to have the courage to kind of like snap at them. And also, maybe what type of belief systems you are getting from others. Are they trying to feed you with some false ideology, for example? Because then Sun and Chiron in your third house is telling you that it's okay to have your own belief system. You don't need to be following the herd. And last but not least, Pisces rising sign. So this full moon is happening in your eighth house, the house of transformation, intimacy, and shared resources. And Sun and Chiron conjunction is in your second house. So you might be feeling a little bit sensitive to any financial situation, or you might feel not supported, or you have got some self-worth issues going on. And you might be taking a closer look at your shared resources and how you handle finances with others. No, so maybe this is the topic of you lending money to others and then you want to get it back. Or you might need to be looking at how much you charge for your services, how much money I gave to others as salary, and so forth. Maybe this is also talking to us about clearing our debts or reviewing our joint accounts, for example. Now, this full moon is ruled by Venus, which has got a conjunction to Saturn in your first house. And maybe you are taking a closer look at your identity, how you present yourself to the world. And even it could indicate, a journey of self-discovery or even defining your personal boundaries when it comes to money and saying no to people or not necessarily doing the overtime and so on. So let's say that you've been feeling a bit vulnerable or exposed lately. So this full moon might bring you the opportunity to explore your shadow self and embrace your inner power. So surely this would bring up the topic of deep transformation and self-discovery. Maybe this is also kind of like an investment into your body, an investment into feeling healthier. Now, Mars is squaring this full moon from the fifth house. And that could create some tension between your desire for pleasure and self-expression and your need for transformation and intimacy. And you might feel a bit conflicted about sharing your creative projects or romantic relationships with others. You might not want to admit something here. You might need to be making a very important decision about your relationships. Maybe you feel like that your relationship is kind of like at a crisis situation. Of course, Mars is in the fifth house, which is the house of romance. Maybe it's time to be fully honest with yourself as well as with your partner about your needs and desires. It looks like that finances need a lot of your attention. Maybe someone is dependent on you. Maybe you have been dependent on others. Even it could indicate that you are questioning whether these people are somehow reliable or not. Maybe you don't feel supported by others. Maybe you feel like that the justice is somehow not there. Maybe you are trying to control your finances. Maybe maybe someone is trying to belittle you, make you look like a fool. And then that's the reason why we lose a bit of a confidence. So that with that Saturn and Venus conjunction, just say no to these belief systems and say no to these people. Be the bigger person. Open up. Show yourself to the world. Show your true self. Because you have got the talent. Chiron in the second house might be talking to us about, we don't know about our talents, but at the same time, the talent is actually the in the in something that we are lacking at. We just potentially need to be practicing that. So, guys, this is my breakdown for this full moon. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I also hope to see you very soon in my retreat in New York. If that's in your interest, check out on my website, AstroViktor.com. And also, it would be brilliant if you just like the video, share the video with others, and even subscribe to the channel. It would be much appreciated. So see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Bless you.